What is up, internet? I'm Alan, a former product marketing manager in tech, where I used to work at an AI startup until I got laid off. And I've worked out mainly startups in my career and a few enterprise companies, so larger companies, 5,000 plus or 2,000 plus. And I started working off in the tech industry as a marketing specialist. Was always interested in tech marketing, and it's kind of where I saw my skill sets fitting best I felt like my skill sets fit the best with the kind of work I wanted to do, as well as the opportunities that will help me build financial freedom. So it was just the best mix of pay, skill set, and interest. And it's the opportunities that were opened up to me. So I started working at the Series B database analytics company, and it was probably one of the best marketing roles I could get for entry level in terms of my responsibilities. What was really great about this role was, as a new grad, you don't really exactly know what kind of specialty of marketing you want to go in. Right, there could be demand generation, which is like email, digital marketing kind of vibes. There could be the marketing operations, which is learning a lot of different systems like HubSpot, Salesforce, and like Marketo or Adobe, right? So they have these, different tools. So there's these different tools that you could use. There's also like product marketing, where it's a lot of messaging and positioning, creating sales decks, sales enablement, product launches, customer case studies. And in my role, I was doing social media marketing in the beginning, and then I'm somebody that gets kind of bored, or I'm a bit ambitious, or I want to learn as much as possible, especially early in my career, because I want to just figure out what my interests were and what I like to do, what I didn't like to do. And so after working at the Series B startup, I grew my responsibilities. My VP began to trust me more, and I eventually got some responsibilities that were focused on product marketing, because I've done digital marketing in the past, in my past internships, and I know what that's like. I did marketing operations. I knew I did not like to do marketing operations, and from my background of what marketing operations is, usually it's learning this very company-wide systems like Salesforce, HubSpot, Marketo, and just learning all the ins and outs and technicalities of it. And that's something I didn't really want to do, because I thought there would be concern of, like, if you go to a new company and they, for example, don't use Salesforce anymore, like, what are you going to do? You're going to have to learn a whole new system, where you're not going to be able to work at that company. So I want to work in a domain that would allow me to have transferable skill sets, and I also wanted to optimize for pay. So I began to narrow in on product marketing as kind of the domain I want to invest my time and efforts in improving my skill set. And I ultimately did narrow in on that focus, and I began to interview for new roles. I began to interview for product marketing roles at this large customer service software company, and I ultimately got the job. And it was a really good job. I think for me, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, I kind of want to learn as much as possible. I get kind of bored easily too if I don't feel like I'm learning, and especially early in my career, I'm pretty ambitious. I want to kind of job hop and climb the ladder, because I want to get as much experiences and grow as many skill sets as possible so I can grow my income. And working this customer service software at this company was really good, because I got to see what best practices look like, what great looks like at a company, because there are a lot of companies in the world, and not all the companies, like especially startups, know what good looks like. So it was really good to get that experience under my belt and work at a company like that. But the issue I was having at this company was I was getting kind of bored in my responsibilities, because when you're working at a really big company, you begin to niche down and really focus on one thing. And that's really good, I think, if you are at a point in your career where you are able to finally realize what you like to do. But since this is one of my first product marketing roles, I wanted to be in a position where I could try a lot of broad different things, and that was really hard to do, especially at a very large company. So ultimately wanted to make a change, so I started to interview around, got a job at a Series D company, and I wanted to have a broader scope in product marketing, and that's exactly what I got. And I realized that scope was almost too broad for me, because I was basically doing every kind of marketing you can imagine. I was doing content marketing, product marketing, field marketing, which is like events, marketing, operations. So basically I was a general marketing role, but it was almost too much work for one person. And that's kind of the double-edged sword where when you're working at a startup, you get to wear a lot of different hats, and then you just really become a generalist, and it's hard to go deep on very much anything. And that's kind of what I wanted at the time, right? I wanted to try all the different types of marketing, and I was okay with being that jack of all trades guys and doing everything. But that eventually burnt me out, because I just had way too much work to do, and I couldn't meet everybody's expectations. And that role was really exhausting because of those factors mainly. Also, like, leadership and strategic changes are also a lot to deal with. And at the time, the company is going through a rebrand, and if any of you marketers are out there, you know rebranding is probably one of the hardest things you can do as a marketing manager, because you have to basically redo your entire site, redo any kind of collateral, like internal sales decks, data sheets, brochures, into that new brand, color, naming. It's a whole process, and it causes a lot of burnout, because you got to move fast, you got to get it right, and you're on a crunch time. So a lot of those factors caused me to burn out, and then I ultimately decided to make the jump to an AI startup, because it was going to pay me pretty well, and I wanted to get into AI. I ended up choosing that role just because of those factors. I had another offer that was a more stable SaaS company at $100 million in ARR, and it was paying me 30 to 40% less. But I knew the work culture would be pretty chill, the scopes would be pretty clear, and there'd be a lot of stability, and there would be good mentorship and career growth. But I decided not to choose that route, because at the time I was optimizing for working in a very interesting industry, which is AI, and then also working to optimize my salary, and that's what I got out of that job. But working at this AI startup really caused me to burn out really, really hard, because just working in the AI industry in general, there is changes coming at you every week, every day actually. And then with those changes comes changes in company strategy, especially on the go-to-market strategy, where messaging and positioning are always changing, collateral is changing, people on our team are getting laid off, so that causes me to take on new roles. So there was a point in time when they laid off our field marketing team and our digital marketing team, and they left the product marketing team. And when you're working in product marketing, you basically become the catch-all of any company's gaps in their marketing department. So at the time, I was doing product marketing, and then because they fired our digital marketing person, I started doing social media marketing. I also had to do marketing operations, which included managing the website and emails. So I was working 3 jobs essentially, and I was also doing field marketing. So I was also going to events. So basically working 4 jobs in one role, and constant strategy shifts in the market and leadership, was a lot of context switching all the time. And then during my tenure at the company, we also went through 2 rebrands. So we rebranded the company twice. One was a major rebrand in terms of the branding and the website, and then the second was like a naming change. But you can imagine working 4 different jobs and then going through 2 rebrands. It caused me to burn out significantly. Like, I've never felt burnout at this level. I felt mild burnout working my last role at that small Series D startup. Not even a startup, just a company at that point. And you know, when I first started working at this AI company, we had a nice team built out, and then they ultimately riffed a good amount of our marketing team, and that caused me to be working 4 different jobs on top of my product marketing role. And that I was up to the challenge at the point because I was really ambitious. I was pretty passionate about what I was doing, and I just had a lot of energy. And I wanted to learn as much as possible, which I was doing. Like, I now understand like most facets of the marketing work, but it caused me to severely burn out because constant strategy changes and constant learning new roles and 2 rebrands, where I hit the point of I was like, my productivity was like going down, my work quality was going down, and I was just a shell of myself when I first started the company. And it took me some time to realize that, like, since I got laid off. And when I was nearing the end of my tenure at the company, I was not even sure I'd be able to make it another year at the company, but even though I committed to myself that I would. So I'm glad they ultimately laid me off, but I was also disappointed because it's just a gut punch to tell you're not wanted somewhere. But that experience at the company was extremely hard because, you know, I think my manager rode me really hard. She put all these responsibilities on me, even though I told her, like, hey, you asking me to manage social media is going to take away from core product marketing output. And she was like, she basically just told me that, hey, I'm doing the same, you can do the same. I was like, okay, sure, but I was just like letting you know, like, this is going to hurt me. And it ultimately did hurt me. It hurt my quality, hurt my output, caused me to burn out significantly. And I feel like when you're burnt out, you sometimes don't even know until you take time to reflect on it, as I have been in my layoff. But being laid off, honestly, this burnout was pretty bad. It's taken me 3 months to fully feel like I fully recovered. For 3 months, I wasn't able to go on LinkedIn. I couldn't even read job descriptions. I couldn't read anything about AI. I stopped listening to podcasts about AI. Like, I wanted nothing to do with the technology industry, and I think that really hurt my ability, or it's really forced me to take this break, which I probably wouldn't have if I wasn't so burnt out. I probably would have jumped back right into corporate and found another job, but obviously the right job, and be strategic about choosing a high quality company. But I think this layoff and recovering from burnout has really showed me what I want to do next in my career. I think I've hit the part of my career where I'm going to be less focused on optimizing for salary. Obviously, I still want to get paid at a market rate, and higher is obviously better, but, you know, I'm not going to sacrifice bad work-life balance for a higher salary. I've, you know, done my tours around startups and know what that's like, and I think since I've already had the opportunity to work at 2 startups and try a lot of different things on the marketing and product marketing, I think I can be at the point where I want to work at a big company where I'm allowed to focus my scope and focus on just being a product marketer. It's going to be really important to me. And, you know, I think it's a blessing in disguise that I got laid off, but I've never felt that kind of burnout in my life where I'm like, I lost all interest in reading business articles, tech articles, podcasts. I just could not even stomach it. And as somebody who was younger in my career, super ambitious, wanted to try new things, constantly is job hopping to try to learn new skills and work at different size companies, I've hit the point where, you know, I want to continue to contribute to an organization, but be more focused and narrow my scope. And I still want to have the bandwidth where I don't tie my entire corporate identity to a corporate job, because I know that getting laid off, right? You know, these things are never promised, and you don't want to, if you lose your job, you don't want to lose your identity. And I also learned from getting laid off that, you know, you cannot rely on one source of income. So I've been making these videos more often to try to build a more passive income stream for myself. I've already have, you know, stock investments, which are I wouldn't say they generate me a lot of passive. I mean, it is passive income like dividends and whatnot, but and investment returns. But I still need to think of more other income streams that I need to create. One is right here with this YouTube channel, and then once I'm back in the W2 world, I'll have more cash flow to think about how I can deploy that capital to help it work for me, so I don't have to work so hard in my job. But you know, that's my story of how I got to the point of my career where I got really burnt out. I wouldn't say I regret anything about where this has got to me to, because you know, working at startups and then working at enterprises and then getting laid off and burnt out has really given me that clarity and realization of where I want to take my career and my life and what I want to do for the next steps. So I wanted to share that story of how climbing the corporate ladder and working in tech, and specifically working at an AI startup that's super fast paced and caused me to burn out, and I lost a lot of my, I guess, light in my eyes. It's cost me a lot, but it's also gave me a lot of clarity to take the next steps in my life. And I've been not working for the last 4 months. I've just been making videos, and I think I needed this recharge break to come back stronger. So that's my story, how working in tech and climbing a ladder ultimately caused me to burn out and forced me to take a 4-month break. And hopefully, you know, next 1 or 2 months, I'll be back on the job market searching again. We'll see how long that takes me to ultimately find a job. But I want to share my story with everybody, and I'll see everybody in the next stream of thought video. Peace.